Good morning, Scotland. Good morning, social media land. I hope you are well. It's Tuesday, the 18th of March, 2025. Yesterday's video pointed out the apathy of remaining comfortable in the face of abuse by the Union. It gave the perspective of a slow strangulation of Scotland by Westminster, the gradual increment of raising the heat when boiling a frog alive, so it's too late when it became aware of its impending doom. I truly feel, until it happens directly in your own backyard, that you will not stand up and be counted for what is right. But it's been going on in your backyard for decades. It was just hidden from us, and on a scale that you would not believe. Today I will be discussing the interview of a civil servant who discovered the extent of Scotland's hidden wealth and went on the record with his findings. I will also publish the entire video interview with this civil servant so you can hear in his own words what John Jappy had to say. John Jappy knew. He wasn't a politician, he wasn't a nationalist, he wasn't an activist looking for a fight. He was a civil servant, a man buried deep inside the system, one of the people who made the British state function. He worked on the numbers, handled the books and prepared the budgets. He wasn't supposed to see what he saw. He wasn't supposed to understand it. And I'm pretty sure that he wasn't supposed to talk about it. But John Jappy knew. He knew everything that Scotland had been told about itself was a lie. He knew that Scotland was never the poor beggar at Westminster's table. Scotland was the starter, the main course and the dessert of a feast so opulent it would embarrass royalty. He knew that while Scots were being told that they were subsidised, their country was bankrolling the entire UK. He knew because he saw it with his own eyes in the cold, unforgiving clarity of the numbers. He knew the truth as far back as the 1960s when Scotland's exports like whisky, meat, timber, fish, tourism were keeping the economy afloat. He knew when the oil boom came, when Scotland became one of the richest nations on earth overnight, only to watch its wealth siphoned off to London. He knew when he saw the calculations that proved Scotland was running a surplus while the UK was drowning in debt. He knew when Labour, desperate to prove itself to Middle England by cutting taxes they couldn't afford just to look like the Tories, sabotaging Scotland's finances in the process. And in 1997, when Treasury Minister William Waldegrave was forced to admit that Scotland had paid $27 billion more to Westminster than it had received under Thatcher alone, John Jappy knew what had always been true. Scotland had never been dependent on the UK. The UK had been dependent on Scotland. But the people weren't supposed to know. The media buried it. The unionist parties ignored it. The lie had to be maintained. The illusion had to be kept alive. The worst thing that could happen was for Scots to realise that they were not a burden. They were the prize. They weren't the ones being carried. They were the ones doing the carrying. And still, the theft continued. Scotland's oil funded Westminster's economic failures. Scotland's energy was extracted, exported and sold for profit, while Scots themselves were hammered with sky-high bills. Scotland's resources, industries and wealth were drained, all the while the people were told to be grateful. John Jappy knew. He knew that Norway was Scotland's mirror image, but one that had been allowed to keep its wealth and invest it for the betterment of its people. Norway took the same oil Scotland had, but a sovereign wealth fund worth £250 billion in just 5 years was created, and they sailed through the financial crash unnoticed. Scotland's oil made billionaires in London rich while Scots queued at food banks. He knew that every time Scotland got close to questioning its place in the Union, the numbers would be twisted, the statistics manipulated, the scaremongering unleashed. Just as in 2014, as it is just now, because the last thing that Westminster could afford for Scots to realise was that they were never too small, they were never too weak, and they were never too poor. They were too valuable. John Jappy knew. He knew because he had spent his lifetime inside the system, because he had held the numbers in his hands, because he had seen the truth buried beneath layers of political deceit. I will read from John Jappy's blog. As a civil servant in London and being part of the establishment, I always accepted the general view that an independent Scotland would not be able to survive on its own without financial help from the London Exchequer. However, when in 1968 I was able to examine the so-called books for the first time, I was shocked to find that the position was exactly the opposite and that Scotland contributed far more to the UK economy than its other partners. This, of course, was before the oil boom. I realised that the Treasury would want to keep this a secret, as it might feed nationalistic tendencies north of the border, which at that time were very weak. I took the decision to keep an eye on the situation, to see how long it would take for the true facts to emerge, which I felt would only be in a short time. However, the Treasury and the establishment did an excellent job, aided and abetted by the media, to keep the myth about Scotland alive. This is your backyard. This was happening then and it's happening now. Does it not make you feel angry? Does it not make you feel let down, manipulated and conned? It should do. And if it doesn't, how much more abuse are you willing to take before it does? I mean, let's consider the fact that Westminster are not even hiding the daylight robbery of our wealth anymore. They are currently building 4 superconductor cables to transfer all the renewable wealth energy that Scotland generates up and down our east coast to land it in England, completely bypassing Scotland. It's been all over the media for the past few months. How does that make you feel? I wonder what sort of excuses unionists will give us for John Jappy's findings. I wonder how they will feel about our renewables being siphoned away south. Anyway, I will publish the John Jappy interview right after I've published this video, so you can hear it from John himself. I'll also put a link in the description here of John Jappy's blog. Tomorrow I'm going to revisit some content I made back in December based on a podcast from a few years ago that proves via memos and civil servant interviews that again, the abuse and hiding of our nation's wealth has been going on for years. And hopefully that may bring about the vital thought process for some of my fellow Scots to make them move across to believing we can be a thriving, independent nation. Join me tomorrow.
This is our land, this is our time. No chains can hold a heart so wild. We rise, we fight, we take our stand for Scotland's future hand in hand. No more waiting, no more fear. The truth is loud, the choice is clear, a nation proud, a people free. Scotland's fate is up to we. From the mountains to the shore, we dream of something more, a land of promise, hope and fire, a future that will lift us higher. This is our land, this is our time. No chains can hold a heart so wild. We rise, we fight, we take our stand for Scotland's future hand in hand. For every voice that's yet to speak, for every heart that still feels weak, we march, we sing, we'll break the chain, we'll never bow, we'll rise again. This is our land, this is our time. No chains can hold a heart so wild. We rise, we fight, we take our stand for Scotland's future hand in hand.